The office window lent the last traces of daylight, warm and serene, as the sun had not yet set. But inside Jason, everything was falling apart. He sat at his desk, staring blankly at his computer screen, unable to focus. His phone had just buzzed with a message from Jake, his closest friend. It was short and cryptic. "Can we meet? I need to talk to you about something important." A strange, uneasy feeling gripped him. Jake never sent messages like that. What could it be? Jason wondered. Less than an hour later, Jason was driving to Sardina, a restaurant where he and Jake often met. As he walked in, he saw Jake sitting alone in a quiet corner, staring at his phone with an expression far from his usual calm. Jason walked over, shook his hand, and sat down across from him. "You look tense. What's going on?" Jason asked, trying to keep his voice steady despite the growing anxiety inside him. Jake looked up, his eyes filled with concern. "Jason, I'm not sure how to say this, but this morning I saw a woman at a hotel. She looked just like Lily." Jason froze, unable to fully register Jake's words. "Are you sure it was her?" he asked, his voice slightly trembling. Jake nodded, his face grave. "I'm certain. She came out of room 611 and walked into 614, but Lily was supposed to be in 612. A knot tightened in Jason's stomach. He couldn't believe what he was hearing. "Lily, she wouldn't do that," he muttered under his breath. "What hotel was this?" he asked in a whisper. "The Terhazy downtown," Jake replied. "You okay?" Jake asked, noticing Jason's pale expression. "Maybe I should have just kept it to myself," Jake added regretfully. "But I thought you deserved to know." "Did she see you?" Jason asked, his mind racing. Jake paused for a moment, then nodded. "She glanced at me as she passed, but she didn't recognize me. It was like she was sneaking back to her room. It's just too many coincidences. We were in the same hotel, man." Jason's appetite vanished. He couldn't stop replaying Jake's words in his mind. The woman he trusted most, his wife, had been seen leaving another man's room. His heart pounded. Doubt and disbelief swirled in his chest. "What am I supposed to do now?" he asked, his voice hollow. "Jason, I know this is hard, but you need to figure out what's going on. I'm here for you, man." "Whatever you need," Jake said softly. Jason forced a smile, one that never reached his eyes. "Thanks, Jake. I'll keep you posted." He stood up and left the restaurant, his thoughts spiraling. The drive back to the office felt like moving through a fog. Jason didn't know what to think, or if he could even trust his own thoughts. Lily had always seemed so devoted, so careful with their relationship, but now everything felt like a lie. Despite the disturbing conversation with Jake, Jason clung to the idea that this might all be a misunderstanding. Lily couldn't have done something like that. She was always committed to their life together. But the more he thought about it, the more the doubt grew. Could Jake have been wrong? Had he misread the situation? Looking back, Jason started noticing small things that seemed suspicious. Lily's work trips had become more frequent and lasted longer. Her calls were often rushed and distant, like her mind was elsewhere. There were nights when Jason tried to reach her, only to be told she was too tired to talk. At first, he didn't think much of it. She had a demanding job. But now, he wondered if there was more to it. Something in her tone had felt off, like she wasn't telling the whole truth. A tight knot of unease had formed in his gut, and it wasn't going away. He had always trusted Lily, fully, but now that trust felt fragile, like it had been built on sand. Then, unexpectedly, Jason got a call, this time from his boss, Sebastian. They had shared dinners before with their spouses. So Jason answered without hesitation. "Hey, Jason. Just wanted to follow up on something about Lily's trip. You asked about her flight details, right?" "Yeah," Jason replied, trying to sound casual. "I wrote them down somewhere, but I must have misplaced it. Can you check with the travel desk for me?" Sebastian agreed, and the conversation continued casually. But toward the end, something Sebastian said hit Jason like a ton of bricks. "By the way, Lily took Matthew Hill along again. He's fresh out of college, still learning the ropes with our vendors. This is his third trip with her." Jason went silent. Matthew Hill. He had never heard that name before. The thought of Lily traveling regularly with a young man he didn't even know about stirred something deep inside him. Why had she never mentioned him? Why was he always by her side? Try to keep his tone light, Jason said. Thanks. Sebastian. Probably just me overthinking. Lost track of her flight info. Sebastian chuckled. Don't worry about it, Jason. Lily's one of the best. Everything's always in order with her. But hey, try not to stress too much, all right? Jason hung up, but the worry gnawed at him. He couldn't shake the feeling that something was wrong. The idea of Lily spending so much time with Matthew, someone she never told him about, made his stomach turn. He needed answers, but he couldn't jump to conclusions without real evidence. That night he couldn't sleep. His mind kept circling back to the same questions. Why had Lily never mentioned Matthew? Why was he always with her? Something just didn't add up. By the next morning, Jason knew he couldn't ignore his instincts anymore. He had to find out the truth, no matter what it would cost him. It was really happening, but he felt like he had no other choice. He had to find out whether his fears were justified or if he was simply being paranoid. Either way, he couldn't wait any longer. His heart was already heavy. Questions kept piling up, and there were no answers. It was time to face the truth. Jason pulled into the parking lot at JFK Airport. The familiar sights and sounds of the airport did little to calm the pounding in his chest. Evening was setting in, and the sky was growing darker. But to him, the world seemed to slow down. Every step toward the terminal felt heavier than the last, and every echo of his footsteps rang in his mind. He couldn't stop thinking about what Jake had told him, what he had seen, and what it all meant. Was he heading toward the truth or about to destroy everything with his own hands? He tried to steady his nerves, but the anxiety only intensified as he entered the terminal. The shuffle of hurried steps and constant chatter of travelers became background noise, a blur, as Jason focused on one thing, finding Lily. His eyes scanned the crowd, jumping to every woman who even vaguely resembled her. He felt like a stranger in his own life, not knowing what he would find, but desperate to find it all the same. And then, after what felt like an eternity, he saw her, but she wasn't alone. His heart stopped. Standing beside her, casually draping an arm around her shoulders, was Alex, the man Jake had warned him about, the man who had come to represent everything wrong in Jason's mind. They were laughing, standing too close. Jason froze. He couldn't move, not even for a second. The world around him seemed to halt. His breath caught in his throat as he watched them. Lily was smiling, but not in a way he recognized. Alex's hand remained on her, as if it belonged there. The sight twisted something deep inside Jason. 1,000 thoughts raced through his mind, none of them making any sense. What was going on? Was this what Jake had seen? A kiss? An embrace? It was too much to process. His body felt tense, like it was begging him to run, to escape the incoming pain. But he didn't move. He forced himself forward, doing everything he could to stay calm. He couldn't believe what he was seeing, but he needed answers. He couldn't just stand there. As he got closer, Lily's eyes met his, and for a split second, it felt like the world shifted. Her face turned pale as soon as she saw him. Her expression changed, from surprise to guilt, and then to something else Jason couldn't quite read. She looked caught, and there was no way out. "Jason," she whispered, her voice trembling. "I didn't know you were coming." Jason couldn't respond at first. His mind was clouded with anger and disbelief. How could she do this? Right in front of him, in public, with someone else. Every part of him wanted to shout, demand answers, but the only words that came out were cold and calculated. "What's going on, Lily?" His voice was low, controlled, but heavy with everything he was holding back. Alex stepped away, a mix of confusion and discomfort on his face. He clearly didn't want to be there. Jason turned his gaze to him, sharp, almost as if he were seeing him for the first time, but the fire inside was aimed at Lily. "Who is he?" Jason's tone was sharper now. The question hung in the air like a challenge. Lily swallowed hard, her eyes pleading. "Jason, it's not what you think. I, she stammered, struggling to find the right words. "This is all just, it's not what it looks like. Please, let me explain." But Jason couldn't listen anymore. The closeness, the laughter, the casual way they stood together, it all felt like betrayal, too painful to bear. He couldn't take her excuses. No, Lily, he cut her off, his tone final. I don't need an explanation. I've seen enough. He turned away. His heart pounded in his chest. Anger surged through him like wildfire. And just as he started to walk off, he heard her call out behind him, "Jason, wait!" But he didn't turn around. He couldn't. He couldn't look at her, couldn't listen to her voice. The noise of the airport faded into the background as he pushed through the crowd. His thoughts were racing, his body numb. He couldn't think, couldn't make sense of it, couldn't believe this was real. It felt like a nightmare he couldn't wake up from. But somewhere deep inside, Jason knew it was over. The trust that once held their relationship together had been shattered. There was no going back. Not now. Not after this. When he finally reached the parking lot, he got into his car without looking back. The engine roared to life, as if trying to drown out the pain in his chest. And only when the city lights flickered in his rearview mirror did Jason allow himself to feel the full weight of what had just happened. The woman he loved, the one he had trusted with everything, had betrayed him. Jason sat alone in a dimly lit room. A small desk lamp was the only source of light. Time had passed, but the turmoil inside him hadn't faded. He had said everything there was to say to Lily, but nothing could change what had happened. She had crossed a line, and he couldn't go back to who he was before. But that didn't mean he was ready to let everything go. The idea of forgiveness felt like a burden too heavy to carry. Lily had left the house and hadn't returned since the argument. That last disappointed look he gave her still lingered in his mind. He had seen regret in her eyes, but it wasn't enough to ease the pain. Could their relationship ever be rebuilt? That question played on a loop in his mind, but no answer came, only uncertainty. In the days that followed, Jason tried to focus on work, as if it were the only thing keeping him grounded. But every time he looked at his empty hand, the one that used to hold hers, he couldn't help but feel defeated. Everything felt distant, blurry. He was lost in his own life and had no idea what to do next. One rainy afternoon, Jason's phone rang. It was Jake. "Jason, are you okay?" Jake asked as soon as he picked up. His voice was laced with concern. "No, I'm not okay," Jason replied, his voice trembling. "I don't know what to do anymore. Everything's falling apart. Lily's gone, and I'm not sure I know how to keep going." "Then you got to do something," Jake said firmly. "You can't just sit there and let this consume you. Whatever happened, man, you can't live like this." Jason let out a long breath. Jake's words hit him like a wake-up call. He was exhausted from battling his emotions alone. He couldn't go on living in this limbo, stuck in pain and uncertainty. He might not be able to undo the past, but he could choose how to move forward. Something inside him shifted. He had to get up. He had to face what had happened. He couldn't remain this lost version of himself, endlessly wondering if things could go back to the way they were. With that in mind, Jason decided to meet with a lawyer. He wanted to do things the right way. No more drifting in the fog of not knowing. She couldn't break him. But when he sat down in the lawyer's office, everything felt heavier than he had expected. Every question about shared property, financial arrangements, made it all feel too real, too final. There was no denying it anymore. This was the end. After the meeting, Jason returned to his apartment. But this time, the silence didn't feel quite as hollow. The emptiness inside him was beginning to fade. He wasn't trying to convince himself of anything anymore. This was it. Lily wasn't there, but he could move on. He didn't know what the future held, but for the first time, he felt ready to start over. He wasn't the kind of man who clung to broken promises. He wasn't going to wait around for apologies. He was Jason, a man who could stand up and move forward. On a quiet weekend, after the rain had cleared and sunlight began streaming through the windows, Lily called again. But this time, it wasn't just regret or another apology. She told him she had been seeing a therapist, working on herself, and that she would never go back to Alex. "Jason, I've hurt you so much, and I don't want to lose you. I can change." "I will," she said. Jason listened. But her words no longer carried the same weight. He didn't need to hear them anymore. He knew exactly where he stood now. He wasn't the one who needed fixing. "I can't come back to you, Lily," he said calmly. "I can't live in a lie anymore. But I'll be okay. I'm going to live for myself now." The call ended, and for once, Jason didn't feel that aching confusion that had haunted him for weeks. He had made his choice. A new life waited for him, whether Lily was part of it or not. He wouldn't let betrayal define him. Every step forward from here would be on his own terms. No looking back. No regrets. Jason sat alone in the same room where he and Lily had spent so many hours together. The dim glow of a desk lamp flickered. Silence surrounded him. This place had once been filled with laughter and trust. Now it felt like the ruins of something that used to matter. The weight of the past still lingered in the air. But he had made a decision. There was no going back. He couldn't keep waiting for something that was never going to happen. He couldn't keep wondering if things might somehow fix themselves. Lily was gone, and even though it hurt, Jason realized he wasn't as lost as he once thought. The anger that had once burned inside him had dulled, replaced by a quiet acceptance. It wasn't easy, but it was the only way forward. The idea of healing, of starting over, it no longer seemed so far-fetched. And yet, that pain remained a deep, gnawing ache. Every time he thought about her, he tried to drown out with work, trying not to dwell on how his life had spiraled into chaos. But no matter how hard he tried, his thoughts always circled back to Lily, to the memory of the look in her eyes when she realized she'd been caught. He couldn't run from it. He couldn't pretend it didn't happen. The woman he loved, the one he had trusted completely, had betrayed him. But it wasn't just about the physical betrayal. It was the lies, the secrets, the realization that their relationship had been built on something he could no longer trust. The very foundation had shattered, broken into pieces, and he didn't know if it'd ever be rebuilt. His phone rang again, pulling him out of his thoughts. He looked down. It was Lily. He hesitated, his finger hovering over the screen, wondering what she could possibly say this time. Part of him didn't want to answer, didn't want to hear her voice again. But another part, the part still searching for closure, needed to know. He answered. His voice was steady but cold. "What do you want, Lily?" "I'm sorry, Jason," she said softly, her voice trembling. I need to explain. Please, just listen." Jason closed his eyes for a second. His thoughts swirled. He didn't want to hear it. Not again. Not another excuse or apology. He'd heard it all before, but there was something raw, almost desperate in her tone that gave him pause. "Go on," he said quietly. "I've been seeing a therapist," she continued, her voice shaky. "I know I've made a lot of mistakes, but I want to change. I can't lose you, Jason. I want to make this right. Please, just give me a chance."